Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, a co-production of EWTN Radio and SpiritualDirection.com, where we provide you with a spiritual haven of rest and explore the riches of the wisdom of the saints and the path to union with God.
This is Dan and Stephanie Burke. Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, your radio haven of rest,
your hermitage of the heart,
your monastery of the mind, where we lift our hearts and minds to heaven to draw upon the wisdom of the saints to help us to navigate the tumult of this difficult life. In our last show, we talked about how Stephanie came to her end and realized that she needed God or she was going to go to hell and take her children with her. That's how she describes it. And if you didn't catch her testimony, briefly offered, of course, there's more, but go to spiritualdirection.com or go to our YouTube page, which is called spiritualdirection.com out on YouTube, Divine Intimacy and Marriage Part 1. This is Part 2, and I'm going to share a little bit about my mess. She shared about her mess, and I'll share a bit about my own mess and the darkness that I've come out of. I talk about it a lot when I teach on spiritual warfare and discernment of spirits. It's hard to know where to start for me just because it was such a huge mess. So I'll let you, if you feel like I'm skipping things relative to how much time we have, and all that, you can kind of ask me questions.
Okay. Okay. So tell me a little bit about like your childhood. Like, what was that like?
It was a terrifying, sad, I've had one sibling end up in a coffin and a niece end up in a coffin because of drugs. And, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, so I want to be careful what I say, but our home was not safe or healthy for anyone for any reason at any time.
I think one of the themes that we both had was divorce.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
My parents were, my biological parents were divorced, I think, when I was around 8 years old, which just devastated me because my dad, even though he grew up in a tough situation too, but he was the more stable of the two. He was a good provider and that sort of thing. But in terms of what I experienced as a child, I grew up with life-threatening illness, which I still deal with today. I was very sick. My first memories are of the hospital, which is a terrible thing. I was terrified as a kid, looking for my parents, didn't know where they were. It was cold, all these sort of negative things. My mom, in order to deal with her own suffering, and
which was
tremendous.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, her mother attempted to kill my grandfather with a knife, and she was institutionalized for 6 years. So my mom, had to deal with all of that as a teenager. So she had thyroid cancer very young. So she ends up, in this marriage where both of them were not prepared to be married. And so they just hurt one another and over and over. And so in order to deal with the suffering, my mom got remarried. And of course, when you marry for dysfunctional reasons, I mean, the divorce rate is actually misleading. It isn't true that you have 100 people in a room and you say, 50 can stand up and that's how many are going to be divorced. Because usually there's serial divorcees, people who have dysfunction but never deal with it, tend to remarry over and over and just repeat the same mistakes. And that's what happened in my parents' life. Mm-hmm. And so my mom, in order to try to deal with her pain, remarried and married an alcoholic abuser who fired a gun in our home, beat my mother into the emergency room, terrorized us children.
And you're seeing all this as a little kid.
Oh, yeah. And so to deal with her pain, another bad decision was she got into the occult. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was I ended up as a child being exposed to the demonic, which is terrorizing in a way. I don't like to talk about it because you can't really describe it, but I can just say to you, think of the greatest terror a child can suffer. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is when a child has to be subjected to demonic forces. So my childhood was made up of, severe illness, spiritual and physical psychological abuse.
Mhm.
So by the time I was, I don't know,
Divorces, split families,
multiple
violence.
divorces. Yeah.
Right.
Both of my parents were married 3 times.
Yeah.
And no matter, and what would happen is I would, because it was so painful in one house, I could bear it for a while. And then I would make my own trouble and bear it. And then I'd have to go to the other house for a while.
Yeah.
And then I was not treated well there. The relationship with the stepmother was very painful.
Volatile.
Yeah, very painful. And of course, where did she come from? A pretty rough, background as well. So I don't blame anyone. It's just was incredibly painful.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 18, 19, I was ready to, I was suicidal. I was even, I was even looking into leaving the country because I was under this delusion that if I could escape and just and get and leave everyone behind, and I actually had contacted a consulate in another country of my own heritage to see what it would take to go there and to get a visa and do all of that.
Yeah.
So I went that far. But anyway, so I move out when I'm around 18, and to escape the pain. And what I discovered was what a lot of people discover in abuse. You did as well. When you leave the home, it doesn't leave you.
Right. It follows you.
It follows you, and
It's clinging to you.
It follows you. In my case, it followed you in terms of dysfunction. There's demonic reality in what you experience, but for me, I was oppressed, demonically oppressed, because of what I'd been exposed to, and then my own sins. And it followed, the wounds all followed me, like with you. And so I ended up going to school, suffering a ton, and while I'm there, crying out to the Lord. And just because, I was just at the end of my rope. I was living in Phoenix.
You were considering suicide.
Yeah, I mean, for me, rationally, it's like so I left home and I wasn't improving, and I couldn't sleep, and I was trying to drink myself to sleep, and I just concluded, well, I can't escape suffering. So if there's no reason for it, then there's no reason to live, because I couldn't emotionally, I did not have the resilience, nor did I have any sense of how to get out of it, because nobody in my life, my dad was functional in the sense that he was, working, providing, but the relationships around him weren't, including me. And there was no pathway to sanity. So I just cried out to the Lord. I remember where I was when I did it, in my little Chevrolet car. I can't remember, but it squeaked like crazy and had a lot of miles on it. And just said, help me. But I didn't really know who I was speaking to or what. I had funny enough, though, I had always believed in God in a vague sense. I'm Jewish. I was, the predominant religion in our home was Judaism. We had Hanukkah, and we also did Christmas. It was a weird mix.
It's a weird mix, plus occult stuff.
Plus, I know, like, yes, right.
Yeah, let's just throw everything at the wall.
It's just strange.
Yeah. So you call out to God.
I cried out to God, and he started sending me people. And he sent me a guy named Mark, who I was working at a Pizza Hut going to school. And Mark was a guy who
had his own issues.
Yeah. I know he was a cocaine addict before.
Yeah. He was recovering.
But I didn't find out that till later. But anyway, I'm working there. I'm new. Nobody's happy working at Pizza Hut. At least it's not there. Maybe there's happy people at Pizza Hut somewhere, but it wasn't in Phoenix, Arizona. So it was just a dark place. So I'm doing dishes in this dark place in my darkness. And he would pull up beside me and say, hey, can I help you? He'd finish his work early. And I initially thought he was just dumb and, whatever. So I'm like, yeah, you can do my work if you want. And I was glad to have the help. And then he kept coming back. Initially, my response was, I thought he was gay. And I'm just reflecting where my head was back then.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have taken that tack now, but so
You just know there must be something wrong with him because
right,
he's being
nice,
nice.
right. Tells you a little bit about my perspective on humanity at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So he kept doing that, and one day he said, he revealed he was a Christian, and he started to tell me his testimony.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he was a cocaine addict. He was also a guitar player. He played a 12th string, and I loved music. It was one thing that helped me in a sense, numbed the pain, the kind of music anyway.
Yeah.
And he said he was formerly a cocaine addict. He had given his life over to Jesus, and that's why he was helping me, because I had accused him
Right.
of,
You were going to fix the problem.
I was going to fix him by busting his nose, and to get him away from me. And he said, no, I'm a Christian and we're supposed to be nice. And so, he said, well, so I responded somewhat positively to what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so he saw a little crack like any good evangelist would. And he said, I'd love to like read the Bible with you and whatever. And I'm thinking, and I said, well, what's that? He said, well, we just talk about how we feel about it. I thought, wow, that's really gay. I'm not going to, I'm not doing that with a dude.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go shooting in the desert or whatever, because it was Phoenix, that's fine.
Well, you had no way to get your head around that. You had no perspective of or experience of men even speaking to each other except for grunting and shooting and
I mean, I
right?
honestly, years prior, I'd been in a hotel with my stepbrother. We graduated from high school and we had the gift of going to Hawaii, and so we had beer and donuts for breakfast. And I remember finding a Bible in the drawer and opening it up. I was probably drunk and mocking scripture, just even so. Like I said, I believed in God, but I didn't connect that I was mocking God or anything like that.
Right.
So
as we're getting ready to go on break, I want to find out like where this encounter with Mark at the Pizza Hut, leads you. Like what's next? Like because you didn't become super good friends with Mark. He's no longer in your life. Where did he lead you? Or where was God leading you through his testimony, through his friendship?
Yeah. So he cracked the door. It's sort of, like Ignatius, when he had his conversion, he talks about his eyes being opened a little, and my eyes were opened a little. So when we get back from the break, I'll kind of dig into what happened afterwards.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Friends, just our latest course that's going to draw you very deeply into a place of knowing and loving God and being loved by him. It's called The Beloved Disciple, Spiritual Wisdom in John's Gospel, taught by Father John Michael Paul, Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You got to apply by October 27th. Go to avila-institute.com. Welcome back to Divine Intimacy Radio. This is Dan and Stephanie Burke. We're talking about our testimonies of how we met, the darkness we've been through, how the Lord brought us out. Mm-hmm. And it's in the context of what we do in Divine Intimacy and Marriage retreats that we give. And this is our second segment of our second show. If you want to see part one on Stephanie's testimony, go out to YouTube and check that out, or EWTN or spiritualdirection.com. Please subscribe out on YouTube and spread the news if you have friends who are looking for hope. So
in this segment, we in this part of the show, you've met Mark, your eyes are open a little, you're starting to read scripture, you're finding out that Christians are nice. So bring us starting there to then meeting me,
so
encounter one another.
I'll do a little brief more on I moved back to California, where I was from, after I graduated from school, and I started to listen to evangelical radio, but I was also there was a period where I got involved in some of the same stuff my mom did,
Yeah.
because I was looking for truth, but I didn't really have a compass. So I won't go into that too much, but I will say I discovered the Lord was clearly working. Um, and I ended up having a draw to evangelical Christianity, because that's what Mark was. My uncle also was. I had brief contact with my Uncle Les during my life, always treated me well, unusually well compared to
everybody else,
other adults.
Yeah.
You know, he just treated me like, he just talked to me like a normal person, and he could see me. That had an effect on me. So I'm back in California. I went to work for my dad's company in construction, and I started to listen to evangelical radio, which I found interesting. Chuck Swindoll, John MacArthur, God rest his soul. He just died. But the one who really was interesting to me was Dr. Walter Martin of the Christian Research Institute.
And why did you like him?
Because he was a jerk. I was very harsh person, and it's just how I was brought up, and so I
connected with him.
He was also, and he was very blunt and direct. I guess that's what drew me.
Right.
So
you thought, I can get into this. This is a Christianity I can believe in, because it's just direct.
He wasn't a wuss. Let me just forgive me that, but that's just the way I thought. And the other thing is he was intellectually rigorous. So he would say, I read this passage this way. Here's 2 other views, and here's why I disagree with theirs. And so I didn't believe in the Bible or anything at that time, but because he was intellectually honest, it just appealed to me. So one day he said he was a Southern Baptist. He let that out. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go and check out these Southern Baptists. So I found the nearest one to my house where I was living at the time. And I had gotten married by that time, and married on the basis, well, actually I wasn't married yet, because there's I'm chronologically impaired, so forgive me for my storytelling process here. But so I went to Southern Baptist Church. I became a Christian there, mainly because the pastor was very open to my directness, my questioning, my brokenness. Spent a whole year with me going through the veracity of the Old Testament, the archaeological evidence, the internal consistency, and then led me to the prophecies of the Messiah of the Jews. I'm Jewish. I still had that identity, even though it was all kind of mixed up. And I came to believe in Jesus. So I started. It was a radical conversion,
right?
Because I now had hope, and I was on fire. So I read the Bible every day, memorized a ton.
You're going door to door. You're like
doing
all
evangelism.
In. Yeah, you're all in.
Yeah, I was. Anytime I could help with the church, I was doing something for the church.
Yeah.
And so then I ran back into a woman that I dated when I was in high school. And basically, there's scripture in St. Paul where it says it's better to marry than to burn, which means if you can't control your sexual life, then it's better to be married than to burn in your infidelity or your, abuse. And so I just honestly said, oh, you're willing? Okay, let's do this. Oh, and she had also been through a lot of trauma and had
horrible trauma.
Had some interest in faith. She was abused. I don't, looking back, and of course she suffered with me too, because I was brought up in this environment where you just don't treat people the way they should be treated. So, got married in that same church that I first became a Christian, Glen Memorial Baptist Church, but it was not a sacramental marriage. She had been a Catholic.
She was baptized.
She was baptized Catholic and had no dispensation to be married. I didn't know about any of that stuff. And Catholics are bad, by the way. The first Catholic I ever met, I had never said this in the last segment, was the guy, my mom's second husband, who was the one who fired a gun in our home. So these Southern Baptists were very anti-Catholic. So that sort of cemented that, angst.
Right.
So
So you go about your life trying to build a family and a home,
right? And
working, all of that.
and it just wasn't. It just was never right from the beginning. The yeah. I mean, it wasn't. I will just say, I had become a Christian, but that doesn't. You don't snap your fingers and become kind. You don't snap your fingers and become patient. You don't. My conversion was real, but I was very difficult to live with. And because of her own suffering in her past, she was very difficult to live with.
Yeah.
And so that just devolved. And eventually she said, I'm done. Don't love you anymore, which was incredibly painful to hear because I was trying. I mean, I was working for Dr. James Dobson at the time. I initiated counseling over and over again. I was reading. I was just trying to, because I didn't believe in divorce and I didn't want it to end that way. And I just knew I was dysfunctional because I didn't want to hurt anybody either. But after a while, I realized there wasn't really anything I could do that would make her feel okay. And
so there was I think there was an event that caused you to say, I'm going to give all for the Lord.
Oh, yeah. So I ended up having an abscess in the base of my brain.
And you almost died.
I almost died. And
you're suffering like
I
crazy.
was in the hospital and as I was musing in the hospital, I realized that what I had done in the marriage, in the family life was every time I moved toward the Lord, everything would blow up and go crazy. And that was just because of her pain and my, so what I would do is back off. And then I would go forward and back off. And what I told the Lord was, whatever the cost, I am never going to back off again.
I'm going to follow you.
I'm going to follow you and I'm going to give my whole life to you, whatever the cost.
Right.
And because I had in the back of my mind, it could cost me that relationship. And it did.
Yeah.
It did. Because I ended up in the Anglican church, long story. And the bishop there said, well, have you ever considered being a priest? And of course you can be a married priest. And I said, no, but I am interested. And he said, well, let's come to seminary. So I entered into seminary and that was the end.
The last straw.
That was the last straw, basically.
Yeah.
So we're getting down to no time.
So how did you get from there to us meeting?
So I while I was in seminary, I converted to Catholicism 1 year, then went seminary for 1 year.
Yeah.
And I ended up in 2005 in the back of a Catholic mass going, I believe, and I want in. And so they let me in, God be praised. I was received and confirmed in a very unusual way on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel.
Yeah. So
then I started to hang out with Catholic singles.
You want to be married?
I wanted to be, well, I discerned for 6 months, I wondered if I was supposed to be in the priesthood because I knew by then my marriage wasn't sacramental and that I could go to religious life. I discerned I was too messed up to be alone. So that brought me to some failed attempts at finding someone suitable. And I found Catholic Match, just like you.
So what were you thinking when you set up your profile?
What was I thinking? I don't remember. What are you getting at?
Well, it was quite humorous.
Yeah.
So you.
Oh, I thought it was so stupid.
Yeah. So
it's like you're marketing yourself, and
right.
I thought it was dumb.
Right,
so
right.
You could probably describe it better.
Well, you wrote your profile in a way that it was a reporter, a female reporter, single female reporter. She's interviewing you, asking you why anybody would want to get to know you and date you.
Right.
And as she's interviewing you, answers going back and forth. This is all your dialogue that you've written. She starts to flirt with you.
Right.
So I'm somewhere else in the world and I'm reading. Well, you sent me a message.
Yeah.
You sent me a message. But you had searched for individuals on Catholic Match and you weren't finding anybody. Why weren't you finding anybody?
I don't know. I mean, it was just the Lord's will. But I did think, well, what is the one thing that most women are deceived about in the church? Am I jumping ahead?
Well, from what you shared with me, you marked that you believed in all the tenets of the church and you would search and nobody was coming up.
There were people coming up, but just not that I was interested in.
Okay.
So then I unchecked contraception because I thought, well, what is the one thing most women are confused about in the church?
What could you teach them
and
about?
And what could I maybe solve? And it was that I unclicked it and your profile came up. And then I reached out and said, hey, would you like to have a conversation?
Yeah.
And of course you figured, well, we're 3 states away.
Oh, I figured it was safe.
Yeah.
But as I was like, oh, nothing's going to happen with this. But as I read your profile, I laughed so hard I cried.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, he's 2 states away. This is not going to amount to anything. This is safe, and I'm not in his proximity. So yeah, I'll talk to him because he made me laugh, and I really like his mind.
Yeah.
And we became.
He's kind of ugly, but you like my mind.
Yeah. Whoa. No. That's what you said. But anyway, and the first question you said is, will you pray with me?
Yeah. Yeah. And that, what I had determined was in seminary, I had to put up an altar to pray at every day. And I thought, if I can find a woman who will pray with me, who will make Christ as the center, no matter how messed up I am, we can make it work. If Jesus is the focal point. And so at my altar, I created a new chair before I even reached out to you. And I put a reserve sign on it.
Yeah.
And they were equally, measured where Jesus was in the center. And I said, if someone will fill that, I'm going to be okay.
And you prayed.
Yeah.
What was the prayer?
Well, I don't remember what the prayer was. What was it?
Wow.
I'm chronological.
Lord, bring me a woman.
Yeah. Who will pray with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I asked if you would pray with me, every single time you said yes. Yeah. If I said, could I teach you the liturgy hours? You said yes. If I, and then
Lord, bring me a woman who will make Christ the center of our home.
Yeah, that was the prayer. That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're out of time. In our next episode, we're going to talk about how that unfolded. God be praised.
Yeah. Okay. Until next time. May the God of peace make you perfect in holiness. May he preserve you whole and entire, spirit, soul, and body irreproachable at the coming of our Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Learn more about the interior life. Visit spiritualdirection.com. Divine Intimacy Radio is a co-production of EWTN Radio and spiritualdirection.com and heard worldwide on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.